Who would you like to face next?
The ones that got the title. All the ones that got the title. That's what I want. You know what I mean? We can't get another known. We're going to probably move on up. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Boots Ennis reveals that his son and fighter, Jaron Boots Ennis, if he cannot get a unification, he is probably going to move up to 154 pounds in the near future. And that's what I want to talk about. Listen, a brand new interview just hit the internet. Boots Ennis, father, trainer of a talented fighter from Philly, Jaron Ennis, he spills the beans. He has stated that his son plans to move to junior middleweight, 154 pounds, if he cannot, in fact, land a meaningful fight in the form of a unification. Say it ain't so. Now, for me, this is bad news, and this is also an I told you so moment. And I'm gonna break this down. Boots was aligned with Espinoza. He was not a PBC fighter, but he was working and performing on PBC cards, right? So he was on Showtime. He had a situation with his late promoter, Cameron Duncan, found a way out of the contract after he passed because of breach of contract. So therefore, he became a free agent. And most people thought, hey, he had a great relationship and a great run on Showtime, and they were doing good business. So a lot of people probably figured that Jaron Ennis would stay loyal to Espinoza and go with PBC now that he's freed up, right? And he had been integrated pretty much into the system and seen how they conduct business. But then one day, Eddie Hearn in rematch room, they had posted that they had signed Jaron Boots Ennis. The day that posted, I went live, I made videos, and I expressed my concerns for Jaron Boots Ennis, because I've been a longtime Jaron Boots Ennis fan and I admire the skill set, but he doesn't have a crazy resume at this point. And that's the only thing kind of holding him back. And I suggested in those early videos, the day it was announced, that I don't know that Eddie Hearn's company and the way, you know, he promotes and stuff like that would be a good fit for Jaron Boots Ennis, right? And some people said, oh, give it a chance, you're hating, la 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 la. It's funny how life works, isn't it? Ego Stradamus strikes again. Now you see exactly what the I was talking about with this new news. You are now on the zone. You are fighting a guy that no one wants to see you fight for a second time. The first fight was abysmal, and that's against Karen Chukadasian, right? The only benefit to that fight is Boots already beat him, so he probably goes into it confident, and that it's happening in his hometown of Philly, where it's the best chance for him to get support with the fight like that. That's it. But again, if you already come from Philly, you don't need to get popping in Philly. Philly's already holding you down. What needs to happen, in my opinion, if he was being moved correctly, is to put him into different markets and blow him up in different markets. You rarely need your hometown once you've already established that you're a good fighter and you're on people in your hometown's radar. He already got Philly love. But Eddie Hearn, who's not American, who's a British promoter, he doesn't understand American boxing like he probably thinks he does. So he's just going to keep abusing the whole Philly lane. Oh, we'll just stick him in Philly, mate. Oh, we had a great crowd in Philly. Wells Fargo, mate. You know, and he's going to do and keep burning it out with these types of fights. Your first fight with Jaron Ennis on Rematch Room was Cody Crowley. People, they did a whole press conference and then he pulls out. Now, that's not directly Eddie Hearn or Jaron Ennis's fault, but it's still a letdown and disappointment because that was probably a better fight. So they sub in David Avocado, a guy that Terrence Crawford flatlined in the ring. And to be honest, Terrence Crawford beat David Avanesian just in a better fashion because Boots was throwing heat. So it's not like he looked terrible or anything, but there was also some resistance. And then it was a in between round kind of he can't come out stoppage versus we just watched Terrence Crawford land some punches when his gloves exploded and he got a sense of urgency and he just destroyed this guy, and we got the ultimate payoff, a knockout, and he's laying there and it's a bad knockout. It's one of Crawford's nastiest knockouts for real, right? And then now you follow it up with Karen Chukadasian, and in between that you had a top ranked fighter, and this is what I told you about. Notice how Eddie Hearn moves. You had a top ranked fighter in Brian Norman, and the whole conversation was about, oh, they don't really want it. The Normans are wasting my time. We offered them record-changing money, blah, blah, blah. And we offered Stanionis, a PBC fighter, money, and Barrios money. They turned it down, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, listen, nobody cares. Boxing fans do not care. What they do care about is getting that alert on their phone or doom scrolling their timeline, and they see a post from their favorite fighter or fighters they like to watch announcing their next fight, and it's a good fight. That's what people care about. So Eddie Hearn, he's like more in the damage control PR game of like whose fault it is and blame game. In America, we don't care about that. Is it a good fight? Yes or no? That's it, right? Americans, we like to get straight to it. Like, you ask a girl on a date, do you want to go out with me on Friday? Yes or no? There ain't no long spills. Oh, I just got a relationship. Do you want to go on a date? Period. Right? And with Bozy saying this, it looks like they understand that there's a strong chance that they might not get a significant fight at 47. So they're going to pivot to 154 pounds. Now, it's not a bad move in terms of 54 because 54 is starting to fill out. However, it's still bad because this is not what you said you wanted. You said you wanted to stay at 47 and become undisputed. And now when you and your promoter can't make that happen, now you have to reroute and do some different stuff. So I would rather be the man who stays congruent with what I say. Like, hey, if I want to be undisputed or at least get the opportunity, win, lose, or draw, then that's what you should see forth. But clearly they can't get it done. And they know that because they don't have Stanionis, which I told you, PBC has him. They don't have Barrios, PBC has him. And they don't have Brian Norman. So all these fights are seemingly eluding Jaron Ennis. And then he's stuck like Chuck. So now he probably has to move up to 154. The other downside is this, is you got to start asking yourself questions about people in boxing, because you have situations where, again, Eddie Hearn, he wants to spin doctor and he'll say stuff like, oh, Brian Norman didn't want it. Barrios didn't want it. Stanionis didn't want it. That's 3 fighters that you have nothing to do with their career, meaning they're with other promoters. How come the DAZN on DAZN fighter fights aren't getting done for Jaron Ennis? Unification or not, why didn't we see Jaron Ennis versus Israel Madrimov? Jaron Ennis versus Sergey Boachuk? Jaron Ennis versus Virgil Ortiz Jr.? Jaron Ennis versus, of course, Terrence Bud Crawford? Jaron Ennis versus Conor Benn? These are all in-house DAZN fights, but you guys are being bamboozled. They'd rather talk about other promoters' fighters and we sent some crazy offer and they turned it down because they want a blame game. They want a built-in excuse of Jaron Ennis is fighting Karen Chukadasian. That's a fight we can get done. But here's why. That's all it becomes. And this is what I told you. It all becomes about a justification of why we had to make this fight rather than making the best fight. And then you have so much time that has went by on the Tyson Fury versus Usyk rematch undercard. You will have a Sergey Boachuk versus Israel Madrimov. So question yourself and question what I'm saying and tell me it don't make sense. How is it that Jaron Ennis can't get nobody, including guys that are on the same platform, but then they'll tell you about the guys from other platforms where those fights couldn't get made? We're not really concerned with those, but the in-house fights, those should be easier to make. But then you have Terrence Crawford and he's fighting Israel Madrimov. So Israel Madrimov in 11 fights gets a name like Crawford as soon as he's willing to work with DAZN. Now Madrimov's fighting a former champion in Sergey Bohachuk. Bohachuk fought Virgil Ortiz, and now Bohachuk gets Israel Madrimov. So them other guys are fighting each other. You got to question this. How is it that strings are being pulled and the promoters can set up the fights where Madrimov is getting good names now, like Crawford and Bohachuk? Bohachuk is getting good names now, like Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Madrimov. But then Jaron Boots Ennis, there's something that's not registering. Why can't he get none of the big fights, right? So maybe they didn't want to move up to 54 because the names I'm mentioning are Bud, Bohachuk, and Madrimov are at 54. So I don't know. Something is up. And like I said, it could be a situation where they really didn't want to move up to 54 right now, but they know they're in dire straits and they don't have many options and by sticking at 47, how you going to get these PBC fights? Barrios is fighting on Mike Tyson, Jake Paul card. He has to get past that opponent, right? You have no jurisdiction over that fight. Same thing with Brian Norman. He just pulled out of his fight with injury and he's a champion. And you allegedly tried to negotiate with him and it didn't work out. So now reality is setting in. We've signed to Eddie Hearn, we being Team Ennis, and he can't get you the fights that you want, including the in-house fights. So it's sad, but it's a reality, and it just makes you wonder, what is the game plan for Boots? Because like I said, when he was on PBC, it looked like he was well on his way to becoming a household name. The fights kept getting better. He was on good cards, getting good placement, being on Gervonta Davis card. That's a hell of a way to build up the next level guy you want to make on pay-per-view. They did it with Canelo and Floyd Mayweather. Tank is kind of like this generation's Floyd Mayweather. You know, he's the lit guy. And then PBC also has Canelo. So I'm pretty sure Jaron Ennis could have, if he stayed with Espinoza and then he was on and actually signed to PBC, he would probably get placement on major cards like Canelo or Gervonta Davis. But they chose the money route because Eddie Hearn was desperate to get them and was probably willing to pay more per fight. And that's all they seen. That's what it looks like to me. They seen it's like the cartoons where their eyes turn into the green dollar signs, and they did the small picture thinking as opposed to the bigger picture thinking. And they're like, yo, Eddie's gonna overpay us to do these fights. That's all fine and dandy, but this is not going to make a pay-per-view star. Again, the only missing link, Jaron's passing all the eye tests. The missing link is getting him the names that push him over the edge where you're like, this boy is bad. He just knocked out Virgil Ortiz. He did something to Conor Benn we have never seen. He could take a punch. He could do it all, right? He needs the dance partner. And so far, between Eddie Hearn and Turkey and Riyadh season money, they do not seem to be getting the major fights for Jaron Boots Ennis. Stay tuned.